Our guest speaker today, I'm really excited about this today. Jay Abraham, he's the $21.7 billion man. He's a proven business leader, top executive coach, and one of the highest paid marketing consultants in the world. As founder and CEO of the Abraham Group, Jay has spent his entire career solving complex problems and fixing underperforming businesses. He has significantly increased the bottom lines of over 10,000 clients in more than 8,000 industries and sub-industries worldwide. Jay has dealt with virtually every type of business scenario and issue and solved every type of business question, challenge, and opportunity. Jay is also a thought leader who has worked with and mentored some of the most successful business builders and entrepreneurs on the planet, people like Tony Robbins, Daymond John, etc. Jay, it's an honor and it's so good to see you again. Welcome to the GPG Mastermind this week.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. And for context, tell me the profile, of the group we're talking to.
All real estate professionals, real estate industry. And that's actually why we were excited to get you on today, because, you know, we do talk about how you've increased the bottom lines of companies, but you've also influenced industries. One of them is real estate. I mean, you've mentored Nathan and myself and Len and, you know, many of us without you even knowing it, because we pay attention to your marketing tactics, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about today, or focusing on if we're talking about marketing and branding, is obviously the real estate industry. But the first thing I do want to do, Jay, you tell the story so well because you have such an interesting backstory, is where the entrepreneurial journey began for you and how you became, you know, one of the highest paid marketing consultants in the world. Can you give us just a brief autobiography on how you got here before we get into the meat of it?
Sure. And it might be instructional because it was foundational, David, for a lot of my methodology. So I got started at the age of 18. I got married at 18. I had 2 children by the time I was 20. I don't recommend it. No formal education. And the only people that would give me, quote, jobs were crazy entrepreneurs who wouldn't give me salary, but they would sort of give me an eat what you kill, not unlike perhaps your industry type of a situation. And when you only get paid when you perform, you figure out very quickly what works and what doesn't. But because I never had an 8-to-5 job, I was able to do really whatever. I was paid for results. And I tended to jump around and concurrently activate or be active in maybe 5 or 8 different businesses. But as luck would have them, David, they were all different industries. And after about 10 of them, I made a startling aha revelation, epiphany. I thought, wow, people in industry A don't have a clue how people in industry B or C or D operate. They don't have the same strategies, business model, marketing, targeting, whether it's lead generating or initial buying. They don't have the same value props, distribution channels, relationships, strategic alliances. They don't do anything the same, not better or worse, just different. And I was able to actually, after about 3-4 years at the age of about 25, I was able to borrow very commonplace success processes from industries I've been in. And then I started doing this, you know, on steroids from lots of industries and introduce them to industries where, frankly, everybody followed the herd and did the same thing. And I became, in essence, the one-eyed man in the land of the blind, to be very truthful. But I had knowledge nobody else did, and I had perspective nobody else did, and I had ways of reaching people and communicating and posturing and attracting and conversion and selling and reselling and monetizing and reclaiming sunk costs that nobody did. And it started at that, and then I got obsessively fascinated with learning everything I could about everything I could. And you fast forward after 4 decades and change, I've done about, and it's just clinical, about 1,000 industries. I've done it on 5 continents. I have been very blessed. I've helped, as you said, about 300 experts. I have helped about 8 of the people in your industry that are experts. And I have a very interesting context of strategic understanding. I started out just as a reference frame, pretty much being a marketing guy. And then I started getting very fascinated with higher leverage elements of the business strategy, business model, value creation, distribution channels, and marketing. But I started expanding dramatically the methodologies that I used to give people boosts. And I've been very blessed. We've had some extraordinary success stories. And the figure that you quoted, very frankly, is about half of now what it's calculated to be. And I'm just saying it clinically. So I've had a wonderful career. I have great relationships around the world. I've traveled around the world now about 81 times, which my parents were shocked by because we never thought I would amount to much of anything. And I've been very blessed. We've had a fabulous experience. And, I came back 6 months ago from being in the Netherlands and being in Barcelona and being in Rio. And I get to do things. And I've had just a very wondrous life of exhilarating experiences for which I'm extremely grateful. That's probably enough.
Yeah, well, listen, this gives us context. And as we say, success leaves clues. So this is why we're paying attention to Jay Abraham this morning. I appreciate you breaking that down. I was actually listening to a book yesterday on my run. I was listening to a book and they mentioned Jay Abraham and your market. It was Game Changers, Dave Asprey. So I was listening to the book and he was referencing you, Jay, and some of the things about marketing. But anyways, Jay, okay, so for some additional context, why and when do people, companies, and brands come to you? So when do they come to you for advice and for consulting?
Well, they're either stuck, stagnant, stalling, suffocating, or they come to the realization that they are successfully stuck. And successfully stuck is an interesting phenomenon. You could be doing really exceptionally well and even better than your industry norm, but based on what the potential of the time, the effort, the opportunity, the market, the marketing, the resource deployment, the opportunity cost, you're getting a fraction of the cost, or of the yield, excuse me, David. So people learn my methodology and it opens up vistas of new perspective they've never thought about. But people want to scale, people want to get greater margin often, and not unsurprisingly, they want to get a competitive advantage. They realize upon listening to me or watching me that they're very tactical and that if they move to a more strategic mindset, it would give them a lot more yield and momentum and power. They're not very relevant in their market. They're not preeminent. They have a one-trick pony and they don't realize how to monetize sunk cost investment in relationships or inactive buyers. They come to me to structure. I've done billions of dollars of strategic alliances, joint ventures, power partnering. You and I talked on your last session. I've gotten fascinated over my life with referral generation. And don't put me terribly on the spot because I do so many things. I have to refresh myself, but we have 125 ways that are more systematic to generate referrals. And they come to me because I have probably gained more distinction for what I will call bottom line moonshots than top. Everyone talks about moonshots, exponential growth, but the concept is pretty focused, David, more on the top line than the bottom. Let's get a lot more revenue. But a lot of times when people do that, the ensuing and the corresponding expenses and resources, net and logistics and infrastructure make the yield not what they think. We have, and this is just, you're asking, so I'm not trying to be arrogant. I'm just giving you clinical. I'm very flawed in most of my life. In these areas, I'm very good. So we have developed about 95 different categories of performance enhancement that most notably multiply the bottom line faster than the top. And most of them require very little, if any, extra investment or risk, but they produce massive upside, sort of outsized outcome, if that makes sense. And that's why they come to me, but it's never always the same. Unlike most people, I mean, I have a very interesting dilemma. What I do is so unfathomably interesting, but people don't understand it because most people, David, they're tactical. They're very good experts, but they're the funnel person or the Facebook person or the Instagram or they're the product launch person. And I'm not any one person. I tend to be more encompassing, holistic, integrative. And and if I stand for anything, I stand for questioning. I question status quo. I don't believe most people even come close to achieving the results they could from the life, effort, career that they're involved in. I believe, David, that most people don't have a context of what they're capable of. Most people do what everybody else in their industry does. And I've been on a mission, and then I'll shut up. I've been on a mission for the last 4 or 5 years to challenge the whole concept of best practices, because best practices, in an ironic way, is limited to the best practices in an industry. And if you're the first to learn them, you have a short-term advantage. But when everybody learns them, it moves from best practices to standard operating procedure, and then you're back struggling with finding another advantage. I've always believed that true breakthroughs, breakthroughs come from outside the industry. Examples, I think we talked about this before, fiber optics that transformed telecommunication didn't come from telecommunication, it came from aerospace and was borrowed. FedEx and all the overnight deliveries that followed borrowed what's called the hub and spoke check clearing system that our Federal Reserve Bank and probably everybody's equivalent uses to get checks processed and cashed overnight in the morning so people don't bounce checks. Rogaine came from a pimple medicine. Viagra came from a heart medicine. The number one baby buggy borrowed the collapsible wheels from airplanes. So I'm a fanatic about borrowing from outside where you have advantage. And then the last thing I'll say is I believe that the key to all of business success is learning how to command and control absolute ethical advantage, and that most people don't have a clue how to do it. So there's a lot to untangle.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack, but it again gives us more context, right? Zooming out, looking at the big picture, it's super important. And like you said, breakthroughs come when you apply, principles and tactics and branding from other industries and bring them back. I think that's super important. But I do want to talk about marketing specifically, a little bit more tactically,
Sure.
Specifically when it comes to, we talked about this at length on the podcast, unique selling propositions and differentiators, USPs. And the reason why we're all excited to talk to you about this because, we're obsessive about it here. The GPG was founded on unique selling propositions. And it's especially important in real estate, right? Differentiating what makes you different. So can you touch on the importance of articulating and integrating your USP, your unique selling proposition in everything you do as a company or service, especially for someone in real estate?
Well, I think I'm sorry because that's probably going to be redundant, but it's so powerful that it's worth hearing more than once.
Absolutely.
So let me see if I can say this the way that I really want to. You know how in medicine, there's wonder drugs, and aspirin is sort of a over-the-counter wonder drug, and they claim that mushrooms, not necessarily hallucinatory, have properties. And there's certain items that are wonder drugs. In marketing, the wonder concept is called the reason why. In the final analysis, everything that gets done is predicated either consciously, subconsciously, tangibly, intangibly, emotionally, or logically on satisfying the need for the other side to understand the reason why. What is the reason why you are going to serve me better? What is the reason why I can trust you? What is the reason why you will be able to give me a happier, greater, richer, more enriching outcome from the home that I buy or I sell? What is the reason why you understand the market or my needs better than anyone else? If you are masterful at understanding all the verbalized, non-verbalized, implicit, explicit, critical and non-critical reasons, emotional and tangible, that combine into that aggregate question, and you have the way of answering it so powerfully, so preeminently and preemptively, two distinctively different words, you own mind share, or you own a segment. I do not personally, it's just my believe you should be all things to all people. I think that is a diluted and a suboptimal approach. I think you figure out who you stand for, what you stand for, why you stand for it, what standing for it means, looks like, how it's expressed, and that's the path you go on. But you can affirmatively have different USPs for different market segments. You want to discuss that? You want me to keep going? What do you want?
Well, listen, to me, USPs, I think, is like critical in a real estate business of any type. If you're a sales professional, you have to be able to clearly articulate your USPs. So if you can break it down even more, like,
Sure.
to the micro, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah,
Maybe
well,
examples.
Let me give you the classic story, and it's from one of our books. But if you go to a hardware store to buy a drill, you don't really want a drill. You want a hole. And you really don't want a hole. You want to fasten something. But you really don't want to fasten something. You want to end up watching your big screen new TV on Netflix tonight, or make sure the door locks for security, or make sure the new bathroom basin, has faucets that flow. And you have to understand that people buy results. Too many people fixate on features. Features are static. They do not achieve anything unless you use them as a bridge to articulate, distinguish, and showcase the unique benefits that you bring to them. And it's that adage, what's in it for them, but it's got to be taken to a much more loftier strata of understanding and expression. But you have to realize when you understand the mind of the market, and it's not profound rocket science, they have options. They have so many options. And people are suspect. They think an industry is a bunch of users. They don't know that they have their best interests. They don't understand the value of that 3% or 6%. They don't understand why you would be any better. They just look at a lot of them as transactional. And you've got to stop accepting that and draw a line in the sand and say, I'm not going to play that game.
Mm-hmm. There's two things there. One is cost is only a factor in the absence of value, right? So if you can't clearly articulate your value, people will question your cost, but they won't if you can articulate value. And, the other thing is benefits, not features. Right. And this is one of the things we reiterate to agents all the time is you have to articulate the benefits, not the features, especially if you're selling a property, right? The features don't sell it, the benefits, right? Getting people emotionally involved in something is critical. It's super, super important.
Let me give you a very interesting example. It's not real estate, but it will underscore this. Mm-hmm. Over my career, besides doing all the advice, I've taken funny flyers in different areas that fascinated me. And for a couple of years, we used to sell Civil War newspapers, and we used to sell Continental Congress newspapers. And the Civil War newspapers were interesting. The Library of Congress, our Library of Congress, like back in the 80s, had this massive collection of old newspapers from the Civil War they wanted to get rid of. And so they got rid of them for about, I think, $4 or $5 a piece. And we bought, I think, $100,000 worth. And we sold them for $200 a piece. And we didn't sell them for $200 a piece, just saying Civil War newspapers, $200 a piece. I romanced the era. I romanced what was going on. I projected people into that, and that they were going to relive it every time they saw this framed on their wall, and it would inspire them if they believed in, in democracy, and it would bring them back to their roots. We did a hilarious one, and I'm not saying this covert. We bought newspapers not from when we formed our nation, but from a year or two later when they really formed the Continental Congress, and we told that story, and we sold those for $2,000 and we bought them much less. We found King James Bibles, and we were able to sell individual pages from them for $5,000 a piece, because I was able to tell a true story that showed you this was the first Bible that was ever printed on the Gutenberg printing press, and the history of when it came from. And part of what I'm saying is value needs to be developed. And a lot of value, for a home, explaining and not advocating, but elevating some of the intangibles about it, or a location, or appreciation, or the joy that will come from. For example, I have a relatively large home, and it has a really, really secluded backyard. It's got a drop-down pool area that looks like you're at a hotel. It has a stream we built in the back for relaxation and reflection. It's green everywhere, and it's lush. And when I'm there, I am at peace with myself. I am inspired. I am in my own world, and I get to do that every day when I wake up and when I leave. I used to have a house at the top. I live in Palos Verdes, California, which is a community on a peninsula, and it's right on overlooking the water. I used to have a house at the top of the highest hill with a 240-degree unimpeded view of Catalina Island and 8 different coves. And I would get up and I would watch airplanes below, and I would get inspired. And at midnight, the moon would shine on it. And every night, no matter how stressed I was, it would inspire me. And storytelling, not telling stories that aren't true, but stories that captivate the imagination and animate inanimate objects, is one of the mechanisms to becoming preeminent and preemptive. I don't know if that makes sense or
no.
not.
It totally makes sense. And shout out to the agent that sold you that house, because they probably painted that picture or told that story, or maybe you helped. But, we talk, I've used the example before, instead of saying large backyard, say the kids can play football, in the backyard, it's the football house or whatever, just like little things, reframing, rewiring the way you look at marketing and branding is super important. Jay, I do want to ask you about, or get your thoughts on, the lifetime value of a client and referrals. The lifetime value of a client is something that we talk about in real estate quite a bit. Not just generating a sale, but thinking about what you want that sale to do long-term through repeat and referral business. So the question is, why is it so important to zoom out and think about the lifetime value of a client? We actually, we did the math on this. It's the lifetime value of a client in real estate is actually 8 transactions if you nurture that lead correctly. So if you do the proper amount of touches, right? And they're referring their family and friends, and you stay in front of them. It's actually about 8 transactions, which is lucrative, right? So why is it important to think about the lifetime value of a client, maybe besides the obvious? And why is it important to communicate frequently with clients and past transactions and clients based on the concept of knowing what the lifetime value of a client is?
Well, let me give you an aggregate, sort of a barrage of perspective. First of all, assuming you can stay in the game long, you're either playing a long or a short game. If you're playing a short game, it's transactional and it's very tactical. If you're playing a long game, every move. So if you think about billiards, not pocket billiards, but real billiards, every shot is designed to set up the next shot. It's very strategic. If you say, I am in this for life, you're either in this for the long term or you're just in it to make some money and move on. If it's the latter, you're in the wrong business. If you're in it to build a true career, if you're in it to be seen as the most trusted advisor, operative words, for life, then you need to set the stage at the very beginning and realize the game you are playing. The most interesting and funny thing to me is people will spend a fortune to get the lead. They will work very hard to sell them. Yeah. Then knowing that transaction is worth 7 more at an average of whatever, 20 grand. So it's worth, let's say, or 30 grand. It's worth $200,000 over your life. They don't invest any amount of time and effort after the sale, which is hilarious. Or they will give a gift that has no residual value. If I give you a fruit basket or I give you a bottle of wine, it's a temporary acknowledgement, and most people will send a crappy one that's not even worth anything, whereas if you give something that is a mainstay in your living room or in your office, and every time somebody acknowledges it, then it reinforces their gratitude and their reference to you. Which one's more strategic? And I don't think people realize that once you there's a concept of the moving parade, and the moving parade is exactly what you said, but it's more concrete. So you start off with either a sale or a purchase. That could be an individual or a family. A family can be 2 people. It can be 8 people. Whatever it is, the statistical probability that over time it will stay constant is very low. It will grow or it will basically restrict. People will separate, people will divorce, people will have babies, people's kids will grow up, people will downsize, people will get more successful and upside. People will buy investment properties. People will buy properties for their spouse or their families, their kids or their mothers and fathers. And that's the dynamic of a life. And if you don't recognize that that's the real opportunity, that's the game you should be playing, assuming you could stay in the game, because once you start realizing that, it gives you, think about this. If the game you're playing is one and done, you don't really care about ever getting anything again from that transaction, and you do nothing different after the sale except keep them in your farming area or they see you on the grocery cart or whatever, then it's ignorant and arrogant to think that you deserve any residual benefit from the relationship, because you're not contributing any. You're really not. And everything in life is an exchange of value, isn't it? So that's the first thing. The second is, once you start realizing the yield on the back end, as I'll call it, you can justify a lot more investment on the front end. Because instead of making your 15, if you know that statistically you're going to get 40 or 50, you can spend another $500 to get them, or you can invest another. And it changes the whole mindset if you play the right game. I mean, is that what you wanted me to say, David?
No, absolutely. You just put it a lot more articulate than I could have, which is, we always say you need two things for a real estate transaction to happen. That's timing and motivation. But what actually triggers a real estate transaction is a life event that you referred to. You said, people get married, get divorced, have children, children move out of the house. That actually triggers a real estate transaction. So you have to be the one in front of them providing value when they have that life event to get that sale. And as you said, I think it was really profound. You said it's arrogant. What did you say? It was arrogant to assume that you deserve the business.
Arrogant and ignorant. Yeah. To assume anything.
And ignorant. It's both. It's a double whammy, guys.
But okay, let me give you just a bottom line analysis, because I've been taught by masters to look at things from many vantage points. So from a mere ROI, if your statistical probability is that when you invest in 100 leads, you close, let's call it, I don't know, 8. I don't know what the numbers are, probably better for your people. What's it worth if you invest in somebody that has already done business with you? What's have a higher probability?
Yeah.
It's logic 101.
Yeah. I mean, taking the words out of our mouth, we say this all the time. As agents, if you're in the sales business, service industry, you can double, triple your business overnight just by working the business you already have. It's a soft touch. It's a warm touch. It's a hot touch, and all those things. So I think it's really important that we focus on the lifetime value of client and understand it from the zoomed out perspective that you just talked about. I think that's critical. The other thing I want to ask you about, Jay, and we talked about partnerships on the podcast, which is really interesting. One thing that came up was the power of, testimonials or third-party endorsements, which are so relevant in real estate. And you told the story about Baron Rothschild on the floor of the stock exchange. Do you mind relating that story again and the lesson that it teaches about testimonials and third-party endorsements? Because it's very powerful.
I can do it, and I'll also tell some empirical stories that build on it. So it's a true story, supposedly, that many years ago, somebody went up to Baron Rothschild. If you don't know, Baron Rothschild was this very wealthy financier in Europe, France, I think, and they wanted to borrow approximately $100,000. And he said to them, I will not loan you a penny, but I'll do something infinitely more valuable. I will walk back and forth twice with you across the stock exchange floor with my arm around your shoulder. And when we are done, everybody on the stock exchange will loan you all the money you want. The implication was, I trust you. You're a good friend. You must be somebody significant and worthy. I have in my career, I was in the seminar business for a short period of time, but during that short period of time, David, we did a stunning $250 million of seminars, home studies, and related programs. I did 98% without investing any money up front. I got the newsletter editors promote me. I got Success Magazine. I got Entrepreneur Magazine. I got Tony Robbins, all to lend the full force of the credibility, the trust, the access they had to the audience I wanted. And your business may not be ethically able to do this, but I just gave them a minor share of the results. Endorsement. Okay, I did the same thing. I took a brokerage firm that was just existing. They were only doing about $300,000 in commission, and we got them to $500 million, not $1,000 million in 15 months without spending much of anything, by getting all the investment newsletters, all the investment and financial advisory authors, all the seminar companies to endorse them as their recommended provider. I mean, I could go through many examples, but I mean, you need, if you talk about advantage and you talk about unique selling proposition, whatever your position is, but people don't understand, now you've got to prove it. How do you prove it? there's many ways to prove it. And the key is usually people will just choose one. The more you layer, it is an exponential compounding power. You can prove it with endorsements. You can prove it with testimonials. You can prove it by establishing the buying criteria that you show them they need to do. You can prove them by telling them what you do that maybe everyone else does, but no one's ever told them. So it comes across as being preemptive and preeminent. You can do it by investing more in not just your regular service, but other things that are corresponding. Because if you isolate what emotional things do they need to prepare before, during, after, and all the things, and you deal with that at a level nobody else does. You can do it by investing. Like if I were a realtor, what I would do is I would front, if I had an exclusive listing, I'd front the home inspection on a bunch of, I'd have it all turnkeyed. So it's a done deal. When somebody goes, well, I don't know if it's good, I'd say, okay, I paid for 2 different ones. Here they are. And you can call them, but there's nothing wrong with this house. Or you can call them and it needs a $5,000 furnace upgrade, which will give you credit. I mean, there's so many things you could do if you really do want to operate way, way above the maddening crowd. And I'm not suggesting your people do not do that. But as I said, you can be successfully stuck. The truth of life is above the mean. If you do a bit more, you can have advantage, but advantage is not optimal. I mean, if you want to play the game at optimal and you want to be, I've got a concept that I call being an exponential entrepreneur, that everything you do in your business, you do in the exponential zone, not the incremental zone, because the differential is incalculable.
Yeah. Jay, the other thing I wanted to ask you about, Jay, and you were leading into this, is your concept of the unlimited business checkbook. We did talk about it in detail on the show, but so powerful. Like you said, a lot of the business you've created and you've scaled was based on equity, the unlimited business checkbook, not needing money to make money. Do you mind breaking down what the unlimited business checkbook is?
Sure. So in its purest sense, I believe that everybody's perceived problem is going to be a solution to somebody's bigger problem. That other somebody just doesn't know it. The easiest example I can give you, and it's a real world one, is many years ago, I used to do seminars in China before China relationships with the United States strained so much. And the first time I ever went, this is 15, 20 years ago, a young man came to the mic at the end of the training program and through translation asked a question. And his question was, what do you do if you're too small and the bank won't lend you money to grow? And I said, okay, tell me more. And he said, I'm a small local motorcycle manufacturer, and only in China, where a city can be 100 million population, are you a local motorcycle manufacturer? But he said, if I had money, I'd travel all over Asia. I'd open a factory. I'd put offices in every country. I'd hire salespeople. I'd recruit dealers. And I said, okay, well, what's the problem? And he got really mad because he thought I was being disrespectful. And he said, well, I need money. I said, you don't need money. You just need to find somebody that you are a solution to their bigger problem they don't know about. And it could be literally anybody in a complementary field. But I said, go all over Asia and find somebody that needs you because they're one trick pony. And I gave him much more instruction. But he went all over. The next time I came to China, 15 months later, he comes to the mic and he's smiling like the Cheshire Cat. He said, I did what you said. I didn't even remember because my whole life, David, is solving problems. But I said, what'd you do? He goes, I went all over. When I got to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, I found Asia's largest lawnmower manufacturer. They had a massive plant. They were underutilizing the second shift. They had the equipment. They had the people. They had offices in 10 countries. They had a sales force. They had thousands of dealers. We made a deal where all I had to do was bring the tools and the dies. If you don't know what that is, the metal, what that is, it's the metal that forges the parts and the assemblies to build up anything. I had to teach them how to do it. I had to teach the salespeople how to recruit dealers. I had to teach the dealers how to sell. But he said, bottom line is in our first 15 months together, we made $20 million each. And the point is, there's always somebody who's got what you think. If you think you are resource impaired, there's always somebody that has that resource or the equivalent they could make possible. And if you say, well, I can't, pay for results because it's illegal, it may be there, may not, I don't know whether you can or not, you have something else that you can, I've done billions of dollars of trades. You probably know this, David, my rates are very high. In my driveway right now, there is a $200,000 driveway that was done on trade. It cost me 2 days of my time. In my garage, there is a Porsche convertible, a brand new NSX Roadster. There is a Maserati convertible with a Ferrari engine that I traded for. Out front is a G-Wagon. I have a negotiable value that I can exchange, but you guys do too. If you don't have the money to do something and you can't legally reward someone on results, you could give them a deferred credit to do their transaction commission free. If that's worth $15,000, you have $15,000 you can create at will to exchange for something you need now. And does that help you?
Absolutely. The power of strategic partnerships, as we say. It's critical, especially in real estate. So what a fabulous breakdown, Jay. And I do want to ask you about, being more than a marketer. You're a strategist, and we did talk about this in detail, but you're a strategist. Why is strategy more important than tactics or hustle? And what's the difference between being tactical and being a strategist?
Okay, I'll tell a story because it's much easier.
Yes.
So it's a little bit long, but it'll forever indelibly embed it. So many years ago, I had two friends, and I'm saying had, one died. And both of them were really interesting people. One was a very great copywriter, but he was totally tactical. The other was a good copywriter, but he was totally strategic. They both got interested right when they started introducing artificial diamonds, which are called cubic zirconia. And these are beautiful, beautiful diamond-like stones that you can buy very, very, very cheap. And the first one, who was a really great copywriter, went in first, and he created a business he called the Beverly Hills Diamond Company. And he wrote a very wonderful ad offering a loose 1 carat stone for $39. And he bought a full page ad back when newspapers were very popular on the front of the section of the Los Angeles Times. It was about $25,000, 20 some years ago. And he ran it. And the ad pulled about $43,000. And after everything, cost of fulfilling, recouping the ad, credit card discount, all that, he made about $7,000, which wasn't enough to rock his boat. So he fulfilled down and dirty, and he quit. Friend two was a far inferior copywriter, but he was a world-class strategist. He watched what happened, and he approached it very differently. He sat down, he created a hilarious company called Van Cleef and Tiffany, which was a take on Van Cleef and Arpels and Tiffany's. He created the Van Cleef Diamond. He wrote a decent full-page ad. He ran it same place, front of a section, Los Angeles Times, cost him the same $25,000, but he did not pull 43. He only pulled about 33. He lost about $4,000, but that's where the difference ends. Friend one, who was tactical, who gave up, took his loose stone, threw it in a cheap corrugated little box with a little note and sent it off, and he was one and done. Friend two was strategic, took the stone, put it in a beautiful velvet jeweler's bag, put it in a simulated wood cardboard box, put it in a protected bubble envelope with 2 documents. The 2 documents are the key here, although the presentation was totally different. Document one was a letter from him as the president of the company, thanking the recipient for having the blind trust to send away for this 1 carat loose stone. And then it gave them a preparatory positive admonishment. It said, before you take the stone out of the jeweler's case or jeweler's bag, we need to tell you a couple of very important points. Number one, you are about to be unimaginably stunned by the beauty, the fiery, mesmerizing look, the clarity, the majesty. This stone will immediately resonate to you. That's the good news. The not bad news, but the true news is when you take it out, at first you might think that we have shortchanged you because it may look smaller than you expect. That's because in order to get that brilliance, that fiery, exquisite, a mystical look, we have to make it denser, means more weight per whatever. And that's why it's going to be smaller. When people like you see how magnificently superior the stone is to anything we describe, they almost all immediately contact us and ask us if we have larger loose stones they can buy, 5 carat, 10 carat, that they can take to their jeweler to set in earrings and necklaces and rings and pendants. And we used to do that, but we found that when they went to their jeweler, the jewelers charged them an arm and a leg for setting it. And because we happen to also be manufacturing jewelers, we can do it for approximately half of what your jeweler would charge you, and it'll be just as or more magnificent. So we have taken the liberty of setting a multitude of beautiful larger stones and rings and bracelets and necklaces and earrings. And we have accompanied a catalog that shows you exactly what we have available for immediate shipment. But because you blind trusted us, we want to give you a reward. If you wish to exchange your loose stone for anything in this catalog, we will give you double credit for it. And to make it easy, we have included a postage prepaid return envelope. But also, if you decide to avail yourself of anything in this catalog, we will not consider your purchase complete or binding on your part until you have taken that ring or that earrings or that pendant to a reputable jeweler and ask him or her what they will charge to produce another version. And if their quote isn't at very least twice what we charge, we don't even deserve to keep your money. We insist you send it back and we'll give you an immediate refund. No questions asked, no hard feelings. So that's what he did. Friend one, who was tactical, made $7,000 and quit. Friend two, who was strategic, lost $4,000 in the first test and made $25 million profit in year one. That, David, is the difference between being strategic and tactical.
That story is one of the most incredible stories I've ever heard, talking about the difference between tactical and being a strategist. Like, mind-blowing. What a powerful, powerful lesson. Incredible story. Okay, Jay, final question. It's actually 2 questions in one. Final question. We appreciate the time here today. Speaking to entrepreneurs and sales professionals, those starting, creating a business, getting into real estate, the stats tell us, pay attention to this, everyone. The stats tell us that 5% of startups and new companies actually make it. Only 5%. Of those 5%, 90% don't make it their first 5 years. That's what stats tell us, right? So, Jay, the question is, what are they missing, or what's the biggest mistake you see entrepreneurs, sales professionals, and businesses making? Or, additional question is, what's the commonality that you do see among successful, sales professionals, entrepreneurs, and business builders?
I'm going to give you 2 answers. One of them you may not appreciate until you reflect on it when this session is over. But the first answer is going to be directly to your question. I'm going to give you an answer that goes against your question. The first answer is they aren't strategic. They don't access their market from multiple impact or leverage points. They don't have the right game plan. They can't go the distance. They really don't appreciate the power of marketing, positioning, and strategy. They don't really have any advantage. They have never been in business, but they are not willing to learn everything they can. The people that normally succeed are the ones that recognize they don't have all the answers, that you don't just jump in it. And I'm gonna take your industry to task, but not you. So what I found, David, and this is not the second point. The second point I'm going to make is going to blow your mind, and you may not like it, but I'm going to tell you about it anyhow because it's part of my reality. Is that when I have looked at hundreds of thousands of businesses, and I'll say, "Do you train your salespeople?" And they'll say, "Of course." But they don't really train them in consultative selling. They don't really train them in listening. They don't really train them in trust building. They don't really train them in the distinction of how you're seen differently and authoritatively. They don't just train them in how to be relevant. They don't just train them in how to be how you are heard in that authority or weakness. They train them in product, or they train them in how to process the paperwork, or they train them in how to use the website. So the difference is the people that really succeed more than ever, the ones that really learn the expertises they don't know, and they have a vision that is very clear in where they're trying to take it, but they invest. Everyone is an investor, whether you realize it or not. I used to say that human beings, we're all human hedge funds because we have this portfolio of activities and issues. It's almost like different asset class we're investing in, but you're all an investor. And sometimes you invest negatively. You don't put anything into it. But anybody who, again, this arrogance, ignorance, if you think you have mastered anything, there's so many soft skills that give you advantage. There's so many differing levels of thinking. I mean, there's 9 categories of thinking: critical, consequential, I can't remember that. I mean, just, creative, strategic, I mean, there's just so many. There's 8 or 9 levels of pattern recognition. There are Stephen M.R. Covey, a friend of mine, he's got 13 character traits that if you master them on trust building, you will triple your impact. I mean, it goes on and on. There's 50 different soft skills over the course of my career I've identified. I don't possess the expertise, others do, but they're specialists. Roger Love is a specialist on how you are heard. A woman with a funny name, Sally Hogshead, is a specialist on how you need to be different. That better isn't better, different is better, and fascination and authoritativeness. The people that win play a different game than the people that lose. Now I'm going to give you the last epilogue, and it's a little bit of a mind blow. I don't think I told you this. Maybe I did. I have 12 books I've written. Most of them I don't even sell. I just want to see how they'll come out, and I put them in archive. But we have 3 we're working on. One is done. It is with a gentleman you may or may not know of. His name is Roland Frazier. Roland Frazier is an icon in the world of pop M&A. Like, he's not a Goldman Sachs, but he's really good. He knows 200 ways to acquire a business using very little or none of your own resources. I'm telling you this because we have a book that's done. Tony Robbins wrote the foreword, Daymond John wrote the intro, and a guy named Gino Wickman wrote the preface. It's a very interesting book, and the title is Creating Business Wealth Without Risk. And the subtitle is, and this goes against what you're talking about, but it's a very fascinating thought for you and your people to talk about when I'm leaving here. the subtitle is How to Earn the Income of a Lifetime Every 3 Years. The premise, now going to what you said, is the average startup has a 1 in 20 first year success rate and a 1 in 10 5. So why would you start something with a 5% success rate if instead you can find businesses galore that have already broken through the viability level, but haven't come even close to optimizing, scaling, maximizing the potential, but already have momentum, critical mass you can build on, hopefully reputation, distribution, things like that, active, inactive, buyer-based distribution, etc. And you can get control of it 200 different ways without using your own money. So any return you get is almost infinite, but you can also use any or many of my 95 ways to blow up EBITDA, and then not a real estate business, but then you do what we call an epic exit, and then you rinse and repeat. The corollary, which is probably relevant to you all, is if you have an existing business, growth can be marketing, growth can be strategy. You can do both those, but concurrently, you can acquire other related businesses, competitive businesses, products and services people buy before, during, after, podcasts, discussion groups, websites, URLs, and you can accelerate growth like you can't believe. So there's a provocative epilogue conclusion to this interview.
Incredible. Jay, what a fabulous breakdown. We learned so much. I hope everybody was taking notes. I'm really glad we're recording this so you can go back and watch. But any current projects you want to tell us about, or where do you want the people to go to learn more? Obviously, follow you on social.
Yeah. I mean, we sell some programs. We have one that's called Taking Your Business Profits Beyond Exponential. But the things that I'm most interested in, I do two things mostly. One is we do $25,000 weekend makeovers that are expensive and intensive, and we only do 15 or 20 people. And it's a marketing makeover, a strategy restructuring, a business model remodeling, a value recreation, distribution channel expansion. It does everything, and it's a very fascinating process. And we do them constantly, and I love those, but they're really fun for me. We also do private clients, and my clients pay me a pretty significant six-figure base, and we get profit sharing, and we get deeply involved for many years with them. So, any of those are cool. We used to have 800 resources on the website, and I put them up purposely because I couldn't stand the crap people were using to cock tease people, excuse my language, but we took a lot of them down because all I asked people was to generously and help make them viral, and nobody did it. So we took most down. There's some stuff up, but I mean, we have tons of, I think I have 300 episodes of a podcast I did I'm not doing it actively now, and it's really cool, called the Ultimate Entrepreneur. I think there's hundreds of videos up, and there's just tons of things, and there's a lot of stuff out there. But if they're big enough, sure, I'd love to work with them. If they're not, I hope that this, I'll leave you with a quote that I love, and it's from the late Bob Proctor, but I really like it. Because he came into my house a couple decades ago, and I gave him some advice that changed his life, but he gave me this phrase and it changed mine. He said, most people in business are tormented non-verbally with the absolute wrong question. They obsess non-verbally, it's just haunting their brain all the time. And that question is, am I worthy of this goal? So let's say you want to make $1 million, or you want to stay in the business for the rest of your life, or you want to be able, to have the life without the stress, or whatever it is you want. He said, when you realize how much more is possible from time, effort, opportunity cost, access to the market, marketing, capital, human capital, intellectual capital, The right question to ask yourself is never, am I worthy of the goal? It's the polar opposite. Is this goal really worthy of me? And I would suggest your people think about that.
Wow. Powerful quote, Jay. I can't thank you enough for being with us today and spending the hour with us. We know how valuable that is. Thank you very much, Brian, as well, for helping out. And Jay, thank you so much, man. As I said, you've mentored myself and Nathan and Len and a bunch of us without you even knowing it, right? And we live in a really special time in human history, right? Where you can be mentored by anyone, right? Jay's got the videos out there. And for more detailed conversation about the concepts we talked about today, Jay is the current guest of the Run GPG podcast. I think we have a visual for that. This is, by the way, Jay, I don't know if you know this, but in tremendous feedback on this episode. We're getting a lot of feedback. Oh, we're now top 10% most shared globally on Spotify. Thanks for throwing
and how many people, I'm not really paying attention, how many people are or will watch this?
It's what we call evergreen. So we create a video, goes on YouTube, and I don't know, millions around the world. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but they're look at
you. I mean, I love touching people that want to be more, do more, contribute more, achieve more, and make lives richer for lots more people. And if your team or your audience or your colleagues or your future viewers, listeners can be impacted, and I helped in any way, that's wonderful. I mean, there's a difference also. You might want to reflect on one more thing is the late Peter Drucker, who was a seminal consultant in management, had a very distinctive difference between a proprietor and a true entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And he said a proprietor really is just trying to suck economic oxygen out of a market. They're not really adding any profound value, whereas a true entrepreneur is fixated on making the experience, the value, the benefit superior, and he or she is constantly focused on never staying static and always challenging themselves. And somewhere, if I can find it, I'll send it to you. Tony Robbins gave me the right to use a fabulous interview he did many years ago with the late John Wooden, who was the winningest basketball coach of all time in college. And his goal is in essence, it would save you having to read, a bunch of pages. The essence is he never wanted to compete against anybody else. His whole adage is every day you want to be better, and your competitor is you. You go in the mirror and point. That's who you're competing against to get better and more impactful, more valuable, more collaborative, more empathic, more proficient each and every day.
Incredible. Again, Jay, I can't thank you enough. It's been fantastic to spend the hour with you.
My pleasure, everybody. Thank you a lot.